Magic and Mystery in Tibet by Alexandra David-Neel, Chapter 6, Psychic Sports. I have just mentioned that the monasteries in the Tsang province are renowned for training in swiftness. There is a legend which recounts the circumstances by which the most important of them, Shalu Gompa, was led to undertake the instruction and exercise of Long Gompas, runners. The heroes of that legend are two prominent lamas, Yongtan Dorji Pal and the historian Bustan. The former was famous as a powerful magician who specialized in the coercion of terrible deities. Born about AD 1284, he is said to be the seventh of the successive reincarnations of Subhuti, in brackets, a disciple of the historical Buddha, close bracket, the line of whose reincarnations was continued later on by the Tashi Lamas, the present being the 16th reincarnation. Yongtan Dorji Bal lived for a time at the court of the emperor of the Mongol dynasty, which then ruled in China. His guru is said to have been a mystic lama whose name was Zurwang, Z-U-R-W-A-N-G, Senge, S-E-N-G-E, of whom nothing seems to be known except through legends and rather fantastic traditions. Yongtan Dorji Pal died at the age of 92 years. Bustan was born at the Thao Phug in the vicinity of Chigatsi in 1288. So he was born at Thophug in the vicinity of Shigatze. He wrote several books on history and arranged the Buddhist scriptures translated from Sanskrit into the present collection called Kagyur. Kahgyur. Now, the magician Yongtan had decided to perform a solemn dubtab to coerce Shinjed, the Lord of Death. The rite had to be accompanied every 12 years, or the deity would slay a sentient being every day to satisfy his hunger. The effect of the dubtabs is to bring Shinjed under control of the Lama magician and to extort from him a promise on his oath to give up the slaughter of human beings for the 12 years. Some offerings are presented to him during the rite, and daily worship is instituted as a substitute for the lives which he is sworn to spare. Bustan heard of Yongtan's intention, and wishing to ascertain if his friend really possessed the power of coercing the terrible deity, he proceeded to the latter's temple, accompanied by 3 other learned lamas. There he found that Shinjed had already answered Yongtan's summons. His fearful form was as large as the sky, says the story. The magician told the lamas that they had just come in time to prove the extent of their love and compassion. He had, he said, coerced the god for the sake of humanity, and now it was necessary to feed him so that he might be propitiated, and he suggested that one of the lamas should offer himself as victim. The 3 companions of Bustan declined the invitation under various pretexts and took hasty leave. Bustan remained alone with Yongtan and declared that if the success of the rite really required the sacrifice of a human life which would prevent the daily slaughter of a being for 12 years, he was ready to walk into the wide open mouth of Shinjed. To this generous proposal, the magician replied that he could manage to secure the purpose of the dubtabs without his friend sacrificing his life, but he would entrust to him and his lineal successors the charge of performing and prescribing the rite every 12 years. Bustan, having accepted the responsibility, Yongtan, by his magic power, created countless phantom doves and threw them into Shinjed's mouth. Since then, the successive incarnations of Lama Bustan, who ruled over Shalu Gompa, have kept up the celebration of the propitiating ceremony. It seems that as time went on, Shinjed acquired some companions, for the Shalu Lamas now speak of many demons who are evoked upon that occasion. A runner is required to gather these demons from various parts. The runner is called Mahaketang, Maheketang. The name Maha is taken from the buffalo on which Shinjed rides. This animal is said to be fearless and consequently dares to call the evil spirits. At least such is the explanation given at Shalu. The elected runner is alternately a monk from Nyang, Tod, Kied, Fug, or one from Samding. Those who aspire to play the part of Mahaketang undertake a preliminary training in either of the above-mentioned monasteries. The training consists in breathing exercises practiced during a strict seclusion in complete darkness, which lasts 3 years and 3 months. Amongst these exercises, the following one enjoys the greatest favor among those many Tibetan ascetics who are not of an especially intellectual type. The student sits cross-legged on a large and thick cushion. He inhales slowly and for a long time, just as if he wants to fill his body with air. Then, holding his breath, he jumps up with legs crossed without using his hands and falls back on the cushion, still remaining in the same position. He repeats that exercise a number of times during each period of practice. Some lamas succeed in jumping very high in that way. Some women train themselves in the same manner. As one can easily believe, the object of this exercise is not acrobatic jumping. According to Tibetans, the body of those who drill themselves for years by that method become exceedingly light, nearly without weight. These men, they say, are able to sit on an ear of barley without bending its stalk, or to stand on the top of a heap of grain without displacing any of it. In fact, the aim is levitation. A curious test has been devised, and the student who passes it with success is believed capable of performing the feats here above mentioned, or at least of approaching proficiency. A pit is dug in the ground, the depth being equal to the height of the candidate. Over the pit is built a kind of cupola, whose height from the ground level to its highest point, again, equals that of the candidate. A small aperture is left at the top of the cupola. Now, between the man seated cross-legged at the bottom of the pit and that opening, the distance is twice the height of his body. For instance, if the man is 5 foot 5 inches, the top hole will be at 10 feet 10 inches from the pit's bottom. The test consists in jumping cross-legged, as during the training exercises which I have described, and coming out through the top of the small opening at the top of the cupola. I have heard Khampas, Khampas, declare that this feat has been performed in their country, but I have not myself witnessed anything like it. According to information which I have gathered on the spot, the final test that consecrates the success of the candidate, quote, calling buffaloes, end quote, in brackets, Mahaketang, close bracket, is accomplished somewhat differently. After their seclusion in darkness for 3 years, those monks who deem themselves capable of going successfully through the test proceed to Shalu, where they are immured in one of the grave-like huts, which I have already described. But at Shalu, the opening is in the side of the cell. The candidate does not have to leap through the roof. A stool is left him so he can climb out of the pit where he has remained for 7 days. He must crawl out through the square hole to the side of the cell. The size of the hole is calculated in proportion to the span between the second finger and thumb of the candidate's hand. He who succeeds is qualified to become Mahaketang. It is difficult to understand that a training which compels a man to remain motionless for years can result in the acquisition of a peculiar swiftness. However, this is the special training of Shalu, and in other places we meet with different and apparently more rational methods, including the actual practice of marching. Moreover, it must be understood that the Lungam method does not aim at training the disciple by strengthening his muscles, but by developing him psychic states. By developing in him psychic states that make these extraordinary marches possible. The Mahaketang starts on the 11th day of the 10th month of the Tibetan year, which corresponds to November. After visiting Lhasa, Samye, and several other places, he is back at Shalu on the 25th of the same month. He immediately sets out again and goes to Shigatse, makes an extended tour of the highlands of Tsang, and returns to Shalu after 1 month's time. Then the linear successor of Buston performs the propitiation rites as Mahaketang's invitations to the demons are apparently always accepted without demur. I, by chance, caught a glimpse of another Lungampa in the region inhabited by some independent tribes of Tibetan origin in the Szechuanese, far west. But this time I had not the opportunity of watching him tramp. We were traveling in a forest. Yongden and I were walking ahead of our servants and beasts, when at the turning of the path we came upon a naked man with iron chains rolled all around his body. He was seated on a rock and seemed so deeply buried in thoughts that he had not heard us coming. We stopped, astonished, but he must have suddenly become aware of our presence, for after gazing at us for a moment he jumped up and threw himself into the thickets more quickly than a deer. For a while we heard the noise of the chains jingling on his body, growing rapidly fainter and fainter till all was silence again. "That man is a Lungampa," said Yongdan to me. "I have already seen one like him. They wear these chains to make themselves heavy, for through the practice of Longam, their bodies become so light that they are always in danger of floating in the air."